The storm had rolled in fast, draping New York City in a curtain of rain that blurred headlights and turned sidewalks into reflective rivers. Olivia Reed stood behind the counter of the small art gallery where she worked part-time, absently sketching in the corner of a receipt paper. Business had been slow all day. No one wanted to stroll through an art exhibit when the wind howled like a restless spirit outside. Then she saw him. The boy sat in his wheelchair near the center of the gallery, completely still, his gaze fixed on a particular painting. Olivia hadn't heard him come in, hadn't noticed the door chime over the sound of rain pounding against the windows. But there he was, drenched in the dim glow of the gallery lights, staring at a canvas as though it held some hidden secret meant only for him. He looked about 10, maybe 11. His face, delicate and pale, was framed by dark, slightly unkempt hair. There was something both solemn and longing in his expression, a quiet reverence, as though he were afraid to blink and miss something. Olivia wiped her hands on her paint-stained apron and stepped closer. "That one's my favorite too," she said gently, nodding toward the painting. The boy flinched, just slightly, as if startled out of a dream. His eyes flicked to her, then back to the painting. He didn't speak. She glanced at the artwork, a sprawling landscape of rolling fields beneath a sky on the edge of a storm. The colors were alive, swirling in shades of blue and green that hinted at movement, at something just beyond reach. "Do you paint?" she asked. A beat of silence. Then, hesitantly, the boy shook his head. "Want to try?" This time, his gaze lingered on her a second longer. Olivia reached into her bag, pulled out a sketch pad and a charcoal pencil, and crouched down to his level. She flipped to a blank page and handed him the pencil. For a moment, he only stared. Then, with a deep breath, he reached out, fingers trembling slightly, and made the first stroke. As the storm raged on outside, inside the quiet gallery, something shifted. A door cracked open between an artist and a boy who had just discovered a world he never knew was his to enter. Olivia watched as the boy hesitated, his fingers hovering over the charcoal pencil she had placed in his hand. His grip was loose, uncertain, as if he wasn't sure whether he was allowed to take up space on the blank page before him. "It doesn't have to be perfect," she said softly. "Just draw whatever comes to mind." For a long moment, he didn't move. The only sound was the distant rumble of thunder outside, the rain tapping rhythmically against the gallery windows. Olivia waited, patient, not wanting to push. Then, slowly, he lowered the pencil to the page. The first stroke was light, tentative. Then another. And another. Lines formed, faint and searching, as if he was feeling his way through a darkened room. Olivia stayed crouched beside him, her breath held in quiet anticipation. And then, something shifted. The hesitation in his fingers faded. His strokes grew bolder, more confident. Shapes began to take form, uncertain at first, but then clearer, purposeful. Olivia didn't say a word. She just watched as the quiet boy in the wheelchair, who had been so still moments ago, became something else entirely. Lost in the act of creation, he leaned in slightly, his eyes narrowing in concentration. The outside world seemed to dissolve, leaving only him and the page, the movement of his hand translating thoughts into art. A small smile flickered at the corner of Olivia's lips. "You're a natural," she murmured. The boy paused, blinking up at her. There was a flicker of something in his expression, uncertainty, maybe even disbelief. But then, just for a second, a spark of something else. Pride. And in the far corner of the gallery, unseen by Olivia, a man watched. Damian Blackwell stood with his hands in the pockets of his expensive coat, his gaze sharp, unreadable. He had seen it all, the way Olivia approached his son without hesitation, the way she spoke to him without condescension, the way she had offered him an opportunity without expectation. Most of all, he had seen Noah's transformation, the way his son, who had spent so long withdrawn from the world, had come alive, even if just for a moment. Damian's jaw tightened. He wasn't sure what to make of this woman just yet. But he knew one thing: he needed to find out. The next morning, Olivia woke to the soft chime of her phone. Still groggy, she reached for it on the nightstand, squinting at the unfamiliar number flashing on the screen. Ms. Reed, Mr. Blackwell requests a meeting with you. 10 a.m. Blackwell Tower. She sat up instantly, her heart pounding. Damien Blackwell. The name alone carried weight, power, influence, wealth beyond imagination. But why would he want to see her? Her mind raced as she made her way through the sleek lobby of Blackwell Tower later that morning. Everything about the place screamed opulence. The towering glass walls, the polished marble floors, the quiet efficiency of the staff who moved with purpose. A well-dressed assistant led her to an office that felt more like a penthouse lounge than a workspace. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Manhattan, casting the room in a wash of natural light. And there, standing by the window, was him. Damien Blackwell turned as she entered, his piercing gaze settling on her. He was taller than she'd expected, his presence commanding without effort. Dressed in a tailored black suit, he looked every bit the billionaire she had seen in magazines. Sharp, controlled, unreadable. Ms. Reed, he greeted, his voice smooth but firm. Please, sit. Olivia hesitated only a second before lowering herself into the chair across from his desk. You're probably wondering why you're here, he continued, settling into his own seat. She nodded. He exhaled, leaning forward slightly. The boy you met last night. Noah. He's my son. Olivia's breath caught. Of course. She had wondered, but hearing it aloud made it real. Noah doesn't connect with people easily, Damien admitted, his tone softer now. He's been through more than a child should have to endure. And up until last night, nothing had ever truly captured his interest. His gaze locked onto hers. But you did. Olivia's fingers tightened in her lap. He didn't just watch you draw. He wanted to draw. That's never happened before. A long pause stretched between them. Then Damien sat back, assessing her. Which brings me to the reason you're here. A slow smile ghosted across his lips. I'd like to offer you a job. Olivia sat frozen, Damien Blackwell's words still lingering in the air between them. A job? She echoed, her voice barely above a whisper. Damien leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. Yes, he said simply. I want you to teach Noah. Privately. At my home. Olivia blinked, trying to process what he was saying. You mean, you want me to be his art tutor? That's exactly what I mean. A strange mix of emotions churned in her chest. It was an incredible opportunity, one she never could have imagined. Teaching the son of one of the most powerful men in the art world? It was surreal. And yet, deep down, doubt gnawed at her. Mr. Blackwell, I'm not really a teacher, she admitted, shifting in her seat. I mean, I love art, and I love sharing it, but I don't have formal training in education. I don't know if I'm the right person for. You are, he interrupted, his tone firm. She stared at him, startled by his certainty. Noah doesn't respond to people the way he responded to you, Damien continued, his eyes never leaving hers. I've hired the best tutors, therapists, specialists. None of them ever got through to him. But last night. His jaw tightened slightly, as if he were trying to suppress emotion. Last night, I saw my son come alive in a way I never have before. And that was because of you. Olivia's breath caught in her throat. She thought of Noah, the way he had hesitated before touching the pencil to the page, the way his eyes had widened as the lines took shape beneath his hand. She had seen something shift in him, a door opening to a world he hadn't realized he could step into. And now, here was his father, offering her a role in that world. The pay, Damien continued, as if sensing her hesitation, will be more than generous. 3 times what you make now. Possibly more, depending on how things go. Olivia's lips parted slightly. 3 times? That kind of money would change everything for her. No more scraping by. No more wondering if she'd be able to afford rent next month. But money wasn't the only thing pulling at her. She had seen Noah's face when he drew, How, for the first time, he had let himself feel through the strokes of charcoal on paper. She had seen the way his shoulders had relaxed, the way his world had briefly expanded beyond the confines of his wheelchair. Could she really walk away from that? You don't have to decide now, Damien said, watching her carefully. But I will need an answer soon. Olivia swallowed hard, her fingers gripping the armrests of her chair. She was just an unknown artist. A small name in a city full of bigger, brighter talents. But to Noah, she had been something more. And that terrified her. Olivia had seen luxury before, but never like this. The Blackwell estate was more than just a mansion. It was a world unto itself, a place where wealth and power weren't just displayed, but embedded into every polished marble floor, every towering glass window, every priceless work of art hanging in its halls. The moment she stepped inside, she felt the weight of it pressing down on her, an unspoken reminder that she did not belong. Yet, she was here. A housekeeper led her through the corridors, her heels clicking against the pristine floors. Every corner of the estate whispered of elegance. Chandeliers dripped with light, oil paintings stared down at her with quiet judgment, and fresh-cut lilies filled the air with a scent almost too delicate to be real. But it wasn't the beauty of the place that unsettled her. It was the eyes. Everywhere she went, someone was watching. The butler, standing stiff near the staircase. A maid pausing just long enough to glance her way. Even the security guards, though silent, seemed to assess her with quiet scrutiny. And then there were the whispers. She's just another opportunist. How long before she tries to sell one of her own paintings here? Does she really care about the boy, or just the paycheck? Olivia pretended not to hear, but the words clung to her like damp air. She wasn't naive, she knew how the world worked. To them, she was nothing more than an unknown artist, someone who had stumbled into the Blackwell empire by chance. And in a world where power was currency, chance was never trusted. She reminded herself why she was here. Noah. The boy who had looked at a blank page like it was a door he was afraid to open. The boy who had found something in art, in her, that no one else had given him before. That was why she had accepted this job. Not for the money. Not for the prestige. For him. Taking a deep breath, Olivia lifted her chin and walked toward the study where Noah was waiting. Let them whisper. Let them watch. She had nothing to prove to them. Only to the boy who had picked up a pencil for the first time and, in doing so, had unknowingly drawn her into his world. At first, Noah was hesitant. Each lesson began with quiet resistance, a slight tightening of his fingers when she handed him a brush, a long pause before he made the first stroke. Olivia never pushed. She only sat beside him, sketchbook in hand, letting her own pencil move freely across the page. She spoke to him about colors, about how they could shift moods, about how every artist saw the world a little differently. Little by little, something changed. Noah stopped hesitating. He began to experiment, blending soft blues into deep purples, sketching shaky lines that grew bolder with each passing day. His confidence built slowly, like sunlight creeping over the horizon. And when he smiled, truly smiled, Olivia knew he was beginning to believe in himself. But while Noah was opening up, his father remained closed. Damien Blackwell was a man who measured people in intentions, and Olivia could feel the weight of his scrutiny every time he watched their lessons. He never interrupted, never voiced his doubts outright, but his presence alone spoke volumes. He didn't trust her. It was in the way he studied her interactions with Noah, searching for ulterior motives in every gentle encouragement, every shared laugh. It was in the clipped tone of his voice whenever he spoke to her, as if waiting for the moment she would reveal the reason she had really taken this job. Noah is growing attached to you, he remarked one evening as he poured himself a drink, the amber liquid catching the dim light of the study. Olivia glanced up from her seat, where she had been packing away brushes. Isn't that a good thing? She asked. Damien's jaw tightened. It depends, he said simply. People come and go, Ms. Reed. Attachments can be dangerous, especially for a boy like him. She knew what he was implying. "I'm not here to hurt him," Olivia said, meeting his gaze. Damien took a slow sip of his drink, watching her over the rim of the glass. "That's what they all say." For a moment, silence stretched between them. Olivia wanted to argue, to demand why he thought so little of her. But then she thought of Noah, the way he had looked at her today, proud of the painting he had finished. She wasn't here to prove anything to Damien. She was here for his son. The tension in the Blackwell estate was thick enough to choke on. Olivia stood in the center of the grand gallery, her breath shallow, her hands trembling at her sides. The ruined painting loomed behind her, a masterpiece once worth millions, now nothing but torn canvas and smeared colors. A gasp had rippled through the crowd when the damage was first discovered, whispers slithering like smoke through the air. And then, just as quickly, all eyes had turned to her. "You were the last one in the room," one of the staff members accused. "I saw you near the painting before it happened." The words felt like a slap. Before Olivia could gather herself, a familiar voice cut through the murmurs. "Everyone, out." Damien Blackwell's command was absolute. The guests and staff hesitated for only a moment before obeying, slipping out of the gallery until only he and Olivia remained. Silence fell. But it wasn't an empty silence. It was charged, coiled, ready to strike. Damien stood across the room, his expression a mask of barely contained fury. "Tell me, Ms. Reed," he said, voice cold, calculated. "How much was enough for you?" Olivia's stomach twisted. "What?" He stepped closer, slow and deliberate. "Was the salary not sufficient? Was being in my home, around my son, not enough? Did you need to make this," he gestured toward the destroyed painting, "a spectacle too?" The words hit harder than she expected. "You think I did this?" she asked, her voice hoarse. Damien's gaze was like steel. "Tell me why you shouldn't be the first person I suspect." Olivia swallowed hard. She had seen it before, the way Damien always looked at her, as if waiting for proof that she was exactly what he feared, another leech drawn to the Blackwell name. And now, with the ruined painting before them, he had all the proof he needed. "Damien, I would never." "Don't," he cut her off, his voice razor-sharp. "Don't say my name like that." The betrayal in his tone stung deeper than she wanted to admit. He didn't believe her. After everything. She felt something in her chest tighten, but she refused to let it show. Instead, she straightened her shoulders, forcing herself to meet his gaze. "If you really think I did this," she said quietly, "then you never really knew me at all." She turned and walked away, even as her heart threatened to shatter. The accusation clung to Olivia like a shadow, whispering in the corners of every hallway, echoing in every stolen glance. She was the only one there. She had the most to gain. Why else would she be in the gallery alone? The weight of the words pressed against her ribs, but she refused to let them break her. Olivia had never cared about the Blackwell fortune. She had never sought power or prestige. But now, standing on the verge of losing everything, her job, Noah's trust, whatever fragile understanding she had built with Damien, she realized that the truth was the only thing that mattered. And she would not walk away without finding it. That night, long after the lights of the estate had dimmed and the staff had retired to their quarters, Olivia moved through the halls with quiet determination. The gallery was empty now, save for the ruined painting still stretched across its frame like a wounded animal. Olivia stared at it for a long moment, forcing herself to see beyond the destruction. Who had done this? Why? She took a slow breath and closed her eyes, retracing her own steps from that night. She had been here earlier, yes. She had walked the length of the gallery, admiring the collection, lost in thought. But she hadn't been alone the entire time. A flicker of memory surfaced. The soft click of footsteps. A shadow moving just beyond her periphery. Someone else had been there. Her pulse quickened. The staff member who had accused her, who had sworn they had seen her alone. What if they were lying? A sharp knock at the doorway made her spin around. Looking for something? Damien's voice was quiet, but there was an edge to it. He stood in the entrance of the gallery, arms crossed, watching her like a man who had already made up his mind. Olivia met his gaze head-on. "Yes," she said. "The truth." Something in his expression flickered, but it was gone too quickly for her to catch. "And what do you think you'll find?" he asked. She took a step closer. "That someone wanted me out of this house. That someone knew you wouldn't question it if I was the one blamed." Damien's jaw tightened. "And you expect me to believe that?" Olivia exhaled slowly, her hands curling into fists. "If you still think I did this," she said quietly, "then I can't change your mind. But I will prove it." She brushed past him, stepping out of the gallery and into the night. She didn't need Damien Blackwell's belief. She just needed the truth. The truth came to Olivia in fragments: whispers overheard in passing, a careless remark at an art exhibition, the subtle yet unmistakable pattern of ambition disguised as innocence. She had spent nights combing through security footage, retracing every step she had taken in the Blackwell Gallery that evening. But it wasn't until she visited a nearby art studio, a space frequently rented by up-and-coming artists, that the final piece of the puzzle fell into place. A canvas, half hidden behind stacks of others, bore a familiar hand. A stroke too deliberate. A color choice too calculated. And the artist? Nathan Caldwell. A name she knew well. He had always been just one step ahead of her, at showcases, in gallery placements, even in whispered conversations with collectors. They had never been friends, not really. More like competitors forced to occupy the same orbit, each aware of the other's ambition. But she had never thought he would go this far. "You look surprised," Nathan said when she confronted him. Olivia clenched her fists, her pulse pounding in her ears. "You did this," she said. "You ruined that painting to frame me." Nathan tilted his head, his smirk razor-sharp. "Oh, come on, Olivia. You really think someone like you was ever meant to last in their world?" Her nails dug into her palms. He had made one mistake. He had underestimated her. Without another word, Olivia turned on her heel and walked away. She had the proof she needed. And soon, so would Damien Blackwell. Olivia stood in Damien Blackwell's study, her hands gripping the folder of evidence so tightly that her knuckles turned white. Across from her, Damien sat behind his massive oak desk, his expression impassive, cold, unreadable. The air between them was thick with unspoken tension. "You have something to say?" he asked, voice clipped, controlled. Olivia met his gaze, unflinching. "Yes," she said, her voice steady. "I didn't destroy that painting. But I know who did." She stepped forward and placed the folder in front of him. Damien hesitated for a second before flipping it open. Photographs, security footage stills, and a statement from a witness, all pointing to Nathan Caldwell. Damien's jaw tightened as he scanned the evidence, his fingers gripping the edge of a printout. "Nathan," he muttered. Olivia crossed her arms. "He wanted me gone. He saw me as competition, and he knew framing me would be the fastest way to ruin my reputation. And you," she took a breath, "you made it easy for him." Damien's gaze snapped to hers, something sharp flashing in his eyes. "Excuse me? You never really believed in me, did you?" Olivia said, her voice quieter now, but firm. "You wanted to. But deep down, you were waiting for me to prove you right. To be just like the others." Silence. Then, Damien exhaled slowly, setting the papers down. "And yet, you're still here," he murmured. Olivia held her ground. "Because Noah deserves better than this." Damien studied her for a long moment. Then, finally, he nodded. "So do you." Damien Blackwell was not a man who apologized. Powerful men didn't need to. They built walls, not bridges. They dictated terms, not regrets. And yet, as he stood in front of Olivia Reed in the quiet of his study, words he never thought he'd say sat heavy on his tongue. She was packing her things, methodical and silent, as if his world, Noah's world, hadn't just been turned upside down. The proof of her innocence lay scattered across his desk, Yet the damage had already been done. She didn't look up when she spoke. "You don't have to say anything, Mr. Blackwell. I get it. You believed what was easiest to believe." Her voice was steady, but there was something beneath it. Something cracked. Damien exhaled, raking a hand through his hair. "That's not good enough," he said finally. Olivia paused, her fingers tightening around a paintbrush before she set it down. "No, it's not," she agreed. He stepped closer, hesitating just long enough to let himself feel the weight of his mistake. "You were right," he admitted. "I didn't believe in you the way I should have. And He sighed, shaking his head. "I'm sorry, Olivia. For everything." The words hung between them, raw and unguarded. For the first time, she met his gaze. And Damien Blackwell, a man who had built an empire, who had mastered control in every form, felt completely at her mercy. The offer came as a surprise. Olivia had expected an apology. She had even braced herself for a reluctant admission of guilt from Damien Blackwell. But this was something else entirely. She sat across from him in his study, the same room where, just days ago, he had accused her of betrayal. Now the air between them was different, less charged, more uncertain. Damien's usual commanding presence was still there, but something had softened around the edges. "Noah still needs you," he said, his fingers interlaced on the desk. "But I won't ask you to stay just for him." Olivia frowned slightly. "Then why am I here?" Damien leaned back in his chair, studying her as though she was one of the paintings in his collection. Something layered, complex, something he hadn't fully understood until now. "Because you don't just teach, Olivia. You see. You see art for what it can be, not just what it is. And I need someone like that." She swallowed, forcing herself to hold his gaze. "You want me to be a curator?" "Yes. 4 Blackwell galleries. Not just one location, all of them." His words settled over her, heavy with meaning. This wasn't just a job, it was an opportunity. A chance to shape something greater than herself, to create a space where artists like her, the unknowns, the overlooked, the ones with something to say but no platform to say it, could finally be seen. It was more than she had ever dreamed of. And yet, she glanced toward the window, her mind already racing with a dozen thoughts. This world, Damien's world, was ruthless, filled with politics and competition she wasn't sure she was ready for. It had nearly swallowed her once. Would she survive it? "You don't have to answer now," Damien said, breaking into her thoughts. She turned back to him, surprised at the patience in his tone. "Take your time," he continued. "But I meant what I said, Olivia. You don't just belong in this world. You could change it." Her breath hitched slightly. For years, she had fought to be noticed, to have her work taken seriously. And now, here was the Damien Blackwell offering her a seat at the table. Not just as a guest, but as someone with the power to pull others up with her. It wasn't an easy decision. But as she sat there, considering the weight of what he was offering, she knew one thing for certain. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of the answer. The afternoon light spilled through the tall windows of the Blackwell estate, bathing the art room in a soft golden glow. Olivia sat cross-legged on the floor beside Noah, their sketchbooks spread open before them. The boy was focused, his small hands gripping a paintbrush as he worked on his latest creation, bold strokes of blue and green swirling together on the page. "That's coming along beautifully," Olivia murmured, tilting her head as she watched him mix colors. Noah glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. "Do you think people will like it?" he asked quietly. Olivia smiled, dipping her brush into a shade of ochre. "That's not the real question," she said gently. "Do you like it?" Noah hesitated, then looked back at his painting. His fingers smudged a bit of the color, blending it into something new. Slowly, he nodded. "Yeah, I do." "Then that's all that matters." From across the room, Damien Blackwell stood by the door, watching them in silence. He had meant to leave, to return to his world of meetings and business calls, but something had stopped him. Something about this moment. Olivia, this woman he had doubted, misjudged, nearly pushed away, had brought life back into his son's eyes. And Noah. Damien's gaze softened as he watched the boy's small shoulders relax, his usual guarded nature slipping away with every brushstroke. It had been so long since he had seen Noah look like this. At peace. Engaged. Happy. And all because of her. For so many years, Damien had believed that the only way to protect Noah was to keep the world at a distance, to shield him from disappointment, from people who would fail him. But Olivia had proven him wrong. With nothing but patience and kindness, she had walked into Noah's life and opened doors that even Damien hadn't realized were locked. And maybe, just maybe, she had done the same for him. Noah looked up suddenly, catching his father's gaze. He didn't flinch the way he used to when he realized he was being watched. Instead, he smiled, a small but genuine smile. "Dad, do you want to paint with us?" Damien blinked, momentarily thrown off guard. He had spent a lifetime negotiating deals worth millions, making decisions that shaped industries. But this, a simple invitation from his son, felt like the most important decision he'd ever faced. Olivia looked up at him, her eyes warm but unreadable. For a moment, Damien hesitated. Then, with a slow breath, he stepped forward and lowered himself onto the floor beside them. Noah grinned and handed him a brush, and Olivia slid a blank page toward him. "No pressure," she teased, smirking. "But let's see if the great Damien Blackwell has an artistic side." He huffed a quiet laugh, shaking his head. Maybe he did. Maybe he was just starting to find it. And as he dipped the brush into color for the first time in years, he realized something. Sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness didn't just change one life. They changed everything. Life has a way of surprising us. Sometimes the smallest moments, a shared conversation, an encouraging word, a simple act of kindness, can create ripples that change not just one life, but many. Olivia never set out to change the life of a billionaire's son. She simply saw a lonely boy who needed someone to believe in him. Through patience and understanding, she helped Noah find confidence in his art, and in doing so, she also touched the heart of his father, Damien, a man who had long forgotten what it meant to trust. This story reminds us that human connection is more valuable than wealth or status. No matter how successful or powerful we become, we all need kindness, trust, and a reason to believe in others. It teaches us that true change doesn't always come from grand gestures. It comes from small moments of sincerity. For those of us who have lived through decades of joys and hardships, this message is clear: never underestimate the power of kindness. It can heal wounds, rebuild trust, and open doors we never imagined possible. Because in the end, it's not what we take from the world, but what we give that truly defines us.